Some people think imagining situations before they happen means you worry too much. They assume that if your mind keeps running ahead, replaying conversations before they happen, predicting reactions, preparing possible outcomes, it must mean something is wrong. But psychology often suggests something deeper. Sometimes this is not a weakness at all. Sometimes it is a mind trying to understand the world before stepping into it. If your thoughts naturally build scenes in advance, what someone might say, how a moment could unfold, what could go right, what could go wrong, it may simply mean your mind is highly active in ways many people do not notice. And while this habit can feel exhausting, it often comes from hidden strengths: awareness, emotional depth, pattern recognition, and the desire to feel prepared. So if your mind often creates scenarios before reality arrives, here are some traits you may quietly carry. The first trait is that you may have a highly observant mind. Psychology shows that people who mentally simulate future situations often notice more details than they realize: small tones in someone's voice, a delayed reply, a certain facial expression, a subtle shift in mood. Your brain stores these tiny pieces and starts building possible meanings from them. This is why before meeting someone, your mind may already imagine how the conversation could go based on what happened last time. You are not inventing randomly. Often your brain is using patterns it has collected quietly over time. For example, if a friend sounded distant in their last message, your mind may create several possibilities before you even see them again. Maybe they are tired. Maybe something happened. Maybe they want to talk about something important. To other people, this may look like overthinking, but often it begins with observation. Research indicates that highly observant people tend to process more environmental information than average, which means their thoughts naturally branch into possibilities faster. The challenge is that when you notice more, you also think more. But the strength is that this awareness often makes you sensitive, thoughtful, and deeply tuned into your surroundings. The second trait is that you may have a strong need for emotional preparedness. Some minds do not like entering moments unprepared emotionally. So instead, they rehearse. Before sending a message, you imagine possible replies. Before asking a difficult question, you imagine different reactions. Before entering a room, your mind already tries to feel what the atmosphere may be like. Psychology often describes this as anticipatory processing, the brain trying to reduce uncertainty by mentally preparing for possible outcomes. This does not always come from fear. Sometimes it comes from wanting stability. If your mind says, "What if they react this way?" it may simply be trying to protect your emotional balance. For example, before sharing an opinion, you may imagine agreement, disagreement, silence, or misunderstanding, all before speaking a single word. And because your mind has already visited those outcomes, the real moment feels easier to handle. That inner preparation is often misunderstood as nervousness, but it can also be emotional intelligence trying to create safety. The important thing is learning that not every imagined outcome deserves equal weight. Because while preparation helps, peace comes when you remember that reality often unfolds more gently than imagination predicts. The third trait is that you may be deeply reflective. Research suggests that reflective people often spend more time mentally reviewing and projecting experiences because they naturally connect events to meaning. Your mind does not simply see moments, it studies them. A short conversation can stay with you because you are not only hearing words, you are wondering what they meant, what they revealed, what they might lead to. That is why your mind may create future scenarios after even simple interactions. Someone says, "We need to talk later," and instantly your mind begins building possibilities. Not because you are dramatic, but because your brain naturally searches for context. People often do this because they care about understanding, not just reacting. They do not move quickly past experiences. They look beneath them. This can become heavy when reflection turns into mental loops, but it is also the reason many reflective people become wise listeners, thoughtful friends, and careful decision-makers. Your mind is often trying to understand life before life explains itself, and that depth, when balanced, becomes strength. The fourth trait is that you may have strong pattern recognition. Sometimes your brain creates scenarios because it has quietly learned patterns from past experiences. Psychology shows that the human brain constantly predicts what may happen next based on previous information. But some people seem to do this more intensely. You may notice that certain conversations often lead in familiar directions. Certain personalities carry familiar energy. Certain situations feel similar to moments you have already lived. So before something happens, your mind fills in possible endings. For example, if someone starts speaking in a certain tone, you may already sense whether the conversation will become serious, uncomfortable, or emotional. This is not magic. Often it is pattern memory. Your mind is comparing present signals with past experiences very quickly. The strength here is that pattern recognition often helps people make thoughtful choices, avoid repeated mistakes, and sense what others miss. But the danger is assuming every pattern will repeat exactly, because while patterns guide, people still surprise us. And growth often begins when you allow room for outcomes your past did not predict. The fifth trait is that you may feel things deeply, even when you do not always show it. Many people whose minds create scenarios before events are emotionally deeper than they appear, because when something matters to you, your mind visits it before it happens. A conversation matters, so you imagine it. A decision matters, so you replay possibilities. A relationship matters, so your thoughts move ahead, trying to understand what could change. Research indicates that emotionally sensitive people often mentally rehearse future moments because emotional meaning activates stronger internal processing. In simple words, if something touches you deeply, your mind rarely treats it casually. This is why small events can create long thought chains. You may imagine how a simple meeting will feel, how a message may sound, or how silence may mean something larger. To others, this can look like too much thinking, but often it is because your inner world is active and emotionally awake. The goal is not to stop feeling deeply. The goal is learning when your imagination is informing you, and when it is simply amplifying uncertainty. Because not every future thought is a warning. Sometimes it is just your sensitive mind trying to understand what matters. And if you recognize yourself in these traits, there is something important to remember. A mind that imagines ahead is not automatically a troubled mind. Sometimes it is a careful mind, a thoughtful mind, a mind that wants to understand before entering the unknown. Yes, it can become tiring when every possibility arrives at once. But it also means your inner world is rich, active, and deeply aware. The key is not to fight your mind every time it creates scenarios. It is to gently ask, is this helping me prepare, or is this pulling me away from the present? Because your strength is not in predicting everything. Your strength is in knowing that even if reality surprises you, you can still handle it. And often, you are more capable than your thoughts allow you to believe. If this feels personal, if your mind often runs ahead while your heart quietly tries to keep up, you are not alone. There are many people who think deeply before life even begins speaking. And sometimes, understanding that changes everything. If you are connected with this, subscribe for more psychology insights that help you understand yourself more clearly. Like this video, share it with someone whose mind is always one step ahead, and stay here for the next insight. Because sometimes one small understanding can change how you see yourself forever.